Hello and welcome back to my channel. You're watching What Helen Reads and I'm Helen, and today I've got my reading wrap up for April for you. So during the month of April I read 15 books, which was about 4,500 pages, which came out to about 150 pages per day, and that's pretty standard for the normal pace at which I tend to read. In terms of how I read these books, so 9 of them were on Kindle Unlimited, 1 of them was an ebook which I bought, 3 of them were audiobooks and 2 of them were ARCs. And then in terms of the genre of romance books I read, 1 was a billionaire romance, 6 of them were mafia romances, 3 were paranormal, 3 alien romances, 1 Omegaverse and 1 dark romance. So again, that's pretty average for me. I do lean towards dark and mafia romance. So I also had a really good reading month. I don't give out many 5-star ratings, but this month I did actually have 3 5-star books. 10 of them I rated 4-star and 2 of them were 3-star ratings. So I'm just going to go through them in order of what I read in the month of April. So the first book I read in April was Scandals of the Father by Zoe Blake, and this is book 1 in her new series, which is the Cavalieri Billionaire Legacy series. This particular one was an age gap romance, and I would also say it's sort of a dark romance, not quite a mafia romance, but there is a mafia connection in this book. Overall I rated this one 4 stars and really liked it. So in this one we're following Baroni and Amara. Now Baroni is an older man and he's got 2 grown sons, and he is a billionaire and owns a local wine vineyard in Italy. So this one's actually set in Italy. One night he's hosting a party, which is sort of an engagement party for one of his sons, and one of the waitresses is a lady called Amara, and she is a local girl from the village. Now she happens to overhear a conversation she shouldn't hear, and that brings her to the attention of Baroni, and he takes an immediate interest in her. He becomes very obsessive, possessive about Amara, and pretty much forces her into a relationship with him. Now this is typical of Zoe Blake's heroes. They always tend to be over the top alpha possessive heroes that don't take no for an answer, which I personally love, and I thoroughly enjoyed Baroni. He was very intense, very obsessive and single-minded in terms of what he wanted from Amara. So I really enjoyed this read, rated it 4 stars, and I'm really looking forward to book 2 in the series. So then the next book I read was Fractured Souls by Neva, Altaj, and this is book 6 in her Perfectly Imperfect series. I rated this one 4 stars. This one is a mafia romance. It's also an age gap, and in this one we're following Asia and Pavel. So basically Pavel is a Russian mafia hero, and he owns or runs several clubs for the mafia that he's part of. And one night he's driving home and he almost runs into a woman, and it turns out to be Asia. So Asia was previously tricked by a boyfriend and was drugged and then captured and taken into sex slavery, where she was obviously forced to be a sex worker. But she's also to make sure that the women that have been kind of captured like stay in line, she's also been heavily drugged as well. Now she has been trying not to take the drugs so that she can clear her mind with the intention of escaping. And one day when she's with the customer has some sort of heart attack or episode. She takes this as an opportunity to escape, and she basically flees where she is, runs out into the middle of the road, and Pavel almost runs her over. And obviously he stops his car, gets out, he realises that one, she's naked because she just ran out as she was. He realises that she's been heavily drugged and needs help, and so he takes her back with him and gets the doctor to come to the house, and that's when he discovers that she's also been quite severely sexually abused as well. Pavel's placed in this really difficult situation because he intends to find her family and return her to her family, but Asia clings to him like a koala, and he is her what, you know, 100% he's her safety blanket, and she just clings to him and begs him not to tell her family where she is because she's deeply ashamed about what's happened to her and she's not yet ready to kind of face the world. Of course, then they're living in very close proximity to each other. She's got a lot of issues she needs to work through, but Pavel is very patient with her. So I really enjoyed this one. Like I said, I gave it 4 stars. I love the whole series that Neva Altaj has written in this Perfectly Imperfect series, so would highly recommend. Then after that we have A Vicious Protector. Now I've actually just recently purchased all of the Mafia Wars books because I just love the covers so much and wanted them in my collection. So this one was a reread for me, and I also listened to it on audiobook, but I have the physical copy here, so I'm going to hold it up and show it off. So this one I rated 4 stars. Like I said, I listened to the audiobook, which was narrated by Tim Page and Kelsey Navarro, and it's book 4 in the Mafia Wars series, and we're still in with the Ivanov family in this one. In this one we're following Adrian and Skylar. So Adrian is one of the is basically Maxine's cousin, also an Ivanov, and Skylar is one of the friendship group from the other heroines from the other series. Adrian has an ex-wife and he is very scarred from that previous relationship and finds it difficult to trust women. And when Adrian first meets Skylar, this happens in sort of book 1 with Ruthless Stranger. All of the women get drunk in a nightclub and end up in a VIP room with the Petrovs, who are the sworn enemies of the Ivanovs. And so Adrian can't get past this. When he first meets Skylar, he's very attracted to her, she's attracted to him, but he won't get past the fact that she was in the VIP room of a Petrov. So the early stages of their relationship are not particularly smooth sailing as Adrian comes to terms with what's happened, but once he moves past that, they get into a relationship, they fall in love, but he is very closed and will not tell Skylar at all about what he does, what he's capable of, what the family is involved in, and very much keeps Skylar out. And Skylar at first agrees not to ask any questions, but as the relationship goes on, she gets fed up of being shut out, and eventually they kind of separate. I won't say any more about this. It's an overlapping series, so basically you do need to read all of these books in order. All of the stories kind of overlap. Each one ends on a happy ever after, but there's always a cliffhanger at the end which kind of leads you into the next book. So I love this series overall. I like this one in the series. It's not my favourite, but I do like this one very much, and like I say, rated it 4 stars and would highly recommend. So then after that I read Always Practice Safe Hex by Juliette Cross, and this is book 4 in the Stay a Spell series. It's a paranormal romance, and basically Revolt is set in the city of New Orleans and focuses around the Savored sisters, who are witches, and this particular one is we're following Livy, who's one of the Savored sisters, and Gareth, who is a Grimm. Now, we've seen the Grimms around since the very first book in this series, and they are very secretive. We don't know what their special powers are, and we saw a glimpse of what they could do in book 3, but in this one we very much find out a little bit more about Gareth, what his abilities are, what he can do. Now I rated this one 4 stars, and as I was reading it I was contemplating actually giving it 5 stars. The conflict in the 3rd act, which is not a conflict between them as a couple, just part of the plot, was really obvious, set up from the beginning, and was resolved extremely quickly. So I would have liked to have seen a little bit more sort of drama, or a little bit more angst, or a little bit more backstory, and then I would have absolutely given it 5 stars, but I absolutely loved it. So I moved straight on then to Resting Witch Face, which is book 5 in the Stay a Spell series by Juliette Cross. This is the one that I'd been highly anticipating, because right from the beginning we know that there is a conflict between Jules, who is kind of like the eldest Savoy sister and kind of like the leader of the witches in New Orleans, and Ruben, who is head of the vampires, and we know that they've had some sort of relationship in the past. Things didn't go so well, and clearly they both still have feelings for each other, but Jules is very adamant that she doesn't want to be with Ruben, and so we don't 100% know why that is up until this book, when we finally find out what's happened between them, why 12 years before, so it's almost like over a decade that they've been separated, what happened, why they separated, and really working through how they're going to get back together. I absolutely love this one. I gave it 5 stars. It was everything I wanted. I loved Jules and Ruben, highly anticipated relationship. I loved you know, everything about what kind of happens in this book. They go on a road trip, so they're in close proximity with each other, but there's also kind of like high drama and angst, so it's the most action-packed, I'd say, out of all the books in this series. For me, there's sort of like high stakes at the end, where something where the characters are put into a very kind of dangerous, difficult situation, and it's how they work through that and get out of that. And so for me, this book was really well rounded. It had, you know, a great plot, storyline, and there was lots of action and drama. I was on the edge of my seat waiting to see what would happen, but of course the romance between these two was absolutely perfect. They had their own happy ever after, and again we learned some things about Henry that we absolutely can't wait to see in the final book of this series. Okay, so the next book I read was actually an ARC. It was Sashas Bounty by Deysi O'Donnell. So I've been ARC reading for Deysi as she's been bringing her books out. And Sashas Bounty is part of the Earth Bounty series that she's been writing. But this particular one was actually written for the Aliens Earth anthology, which is due out on the 9th of May. It's an alien romance, it is a novella, it's shorter than her other books, and it's also a polyamorous relationship, because in this one we have Sasha, who is human, and then we have Breton and Rook, who are aliens who become her mates. So basically it's a MFM romance, I would say. So the general premise of this one is that a group of humans have been kidnapped from Earth, abducted by aliens, and the aliens that abducted them have been selling these women off in auctions to go into pleasure houses around the galaxy. And there is a group of bounty hunters that have basically been trying to track them down and find them and rescue them from where they're going. Now, Sasha is one of these humans that has been abducted from Earth, and she's been sold to a group of aliens who are now transporting her back to their planet, I guess. We don't really know what they're doing with her, but they're transporting her back. Now, they happen to stop off at a space station. They go into the pub, or the equivalent of a pub, and start chatting and bragging about the fact that they've basically bought this human at auction and they've got her on board the ship. Now, this conversation is overheard by Breton and Rook, and they decide that they're going to rescue this human and take down the bad aliens, and they do. And when they rescue her, they have every intention of trying to return her back to Earth, but they're in very close proximity with each other on board the ship, and of course they are very attracted to each other and they form a relationship. And Deysi O'Donnell writes fun, fast-paced action romances, and this one is no different. But like I say, it is a novella, so it is slightly on the shorter side, so we get to the action much quicker than some of the other books. But still really enjoyed this one and rated it 4 stars. So that very much put me in the mood for an alien romance, and I decided that I was going to read Claimed by the Alien Warrior by Tiffany Roberts. So this is another alien romance, but this time the alien is actually on Earth, so no humans get abducted. This is a kind of a road trip, close proximity, single bed kind of trope. And in this one, we're following Zoe and Rendesh. So in this one, Rendesh is actually an alien warrior whose ship crash landed on Earth, and he's been on Earth for several years. So when he crash landed on Earth, some of the people he was traveling with obviously died instantly, and the rest of them were actually captured by the US government, and they've been doing experiments on them ever since. Now, over time, all of the other aliens have died, and Rendesh is the last one alive. And basically, the American government decided to transport him to a new facility, and during the time when he's being transported, he takes the opportunity to break out and escape. Zoe had a boyfriend but he was very much taking advantage of her. And one day she comes home early after being sacked from her job to discover that he is having an affair with another woman. So she kicks him out, only to then find out that he's not been paying the rent. So she's been giving him cash to pay the rent and he hasn't been paying it. So the landlord basically is about to evict her. So she has no choice but to pack up and head to her friends. Now when she is in the middle of this road trip, she stops at a gas station, and when she gets back in the car she realises that an alien is in her back seat. So this is where Rendesh meets Zoe, because he is now hiding out in the back of her car to get away from the government that are tracking him down. And then they kind of go on this road trip, and over time Zoe is scared of Rendesh at first, but they become friends, they learn more about each other. She very much wants to help him escape the government because she knows what they're doing is wrong, and ultimately they're trying to make their way back to his crashed spaceship, where he thinks there may be a chance to either repair it or use kind of another pod to get off world. So I thoroughly enjoyed this one, gave this one 4 stars. It was a really fun read. Rendesh, although he's like a very scary looking green alien, he was so endearing and sweet and really looked after Zoe. And yeah, I just thought this was a really fun read, and would highly recommend. Then after that I read Dark Stranger by Piper Stone, and this is book 1 in her Edge of Darkness series. I rated this one 4 stars. It was a mafia romance, but it's also kind of a stalker and forced marriage trope that's going on here. So we're following Sierra and Alessandro in this one. So I've decided that Piper Stone is my guilty pleasure. On one hand, you read her books and you think, I shouldn't be enjoying this at all. It makes no sense. The men are all alpha a-holes basically, who won't take no for an answer. It really shouldn't be something that I enjoy reading. It partly doesn't even make any sense what happens or how it happens, but I find myself really enjoying the read. She's got a very specific writing style. So once you've read quite a lot of Piper Stones, all the heroes and heroines do tend to bleed together because they're very similar in style, but while you're reading it you get very kind of immersed in what's going on. This was very much a stalker romance, and Alessandro is a mafia don who's actually been in prison for 4 years, and the reason he's been in prison is because Sierra's fiance got hold of some evidence and kind of used it against him. But Sierra's fiance actually died at the same time that he ended up going to prison. Now Sierra only knew her fiance for a year. She didn't know everything about him. In fact, he didn't really tell her much about kind of what he did. But what we find out through this book is that he was actually connected to the mafia. He was their kind of their financial advisor, their money man, and he'd been collecting evidence to put the Don away. Everyone believes that he's dead. Alessandro suspects that maybe he isn't dead and he's faked his death. But Sierra has been mourning her dead fiance for 4 years and just can't let it go. And then Alessandro decides that he's going to start stalking her, and he starts stalking her from prison, and he finds a way to phone her and have very dark and strange and kind of passionate conversations over the telephone, and he's threatening that he's going to come and get her. So when he finally comes out of prison, he does absolutely come and find her and kind of starts to invade her life. So it's kind of very dark and gothic and sinister at the beginning, but then after they kind of meet and we start to unravel the plot about what's happened with the fiance and some other characters in this book, we maybe learn that things aren't quite as they seem. So again, I rated this one 4 stars. I personally really enjoyed it. I'd give it a go if you kind of like dark mafia stalker romances. Then the next one that I read was Savored Innocence by Measha Stone, and this I read as an arc. This is another mafia romance and is book 5 in the Innocent Bride series. So it's a pretty short book, just around the 250 page mark from memory, and in this one we're following Billy and Roman. Billy is friends with another heroine from one of the previous books, and she met Roman about 2 years before. Now they're very attracted to each other, but Roman didn't ever call her again after that, and the main reason was because Roman is obviously part of the mafia. He didn't want to get Billy involved in that lifestyle, so he was very much staying away to protect her. But wind on 2 years, and Billy has gone to a nightclub with her friend. They get very drunk, they get propositioned by a couple of men, and she gets herself into a bit of a pickle, shall we say, and she decides she's going to lie her way out of this by saying that she's Roman's fiance, because she knows that if she says she's Roman's fiance, then they won't touch her. Of course, Roman happens to be there that night. He kind of owns the nightclub, and she gets taken to his office, and they say, you know, this woman claims to be your fiance, is she? And he has been secretly thinking about her for the last 2 years, and decides this is the perfect opportunity to absolutely say yes, she's his fiance, and in a way she falls into his trap to get married. So this is a mafia romance, but it's also sort of a fake engagement, because they kind of lie about the fact that they're engaged, but ultimately she's fallen straight into Roman's trap because he absolutely intends to marry her. With all of Measha Stone's books, again, they are focused on very much alpha heroes who are very possessive and obsessive and don't take no for an answer. So I thoroughly enjoy these. They're fun and quick reads. I really enjoy reading them. I rated this one as a 4-star because it was an arc, but ordinarily I would have rated this one a 3-star, which still is a good rating for me. It still means I liked it. So then I read Obsession by Liliana Carlisle, and this is her new release that came out in April, and the date came out, I snapped it right up. It's book 2 in her Forbidden Alpha series, and I also gave this one 4 stars. Now this one's Omegaverse, and it was also a bit of a stalker fated mates romance as well. And in this one we're following Julian and Audrey. In this one, this is kind of a future dystopian version of our world. It's set in North America, so basically the USA, and if you present as an alpha, you get taken away by the military and trained to be a super soldier. Now all the Omegas are also rounded up, and they are kept in very nice accommodations, but they're not allowed to go near the alphas, and they're pretty much told by the government that the alphas are really bad. It's not, they shouldn't be together, and they try and keep them apart. Now in book 1, what actually happened was all the alphas escaped from the military base basically, which was an island, and now they're trying to release evidence that they're being mistreated by the American government, that they're completely wrong about the relationship between Omegas and alphas, and the fact that alphas are really evil and violent, and that the Omegas aren't in any danger at all, and try to sway basically the government and the population about how alphas and Omegas should be treated. So in this one, Julian is one of the escaped alphas, and he has gone to a science lab to see if he can uncover some information that might be useful to their cause. And this is where he bumps into Audrey, because Audrey is a human scientist who has been experimenting on alphas, exploring more about the alpha omega bond, and she started to realise that things aren't quite right. Following the events of book 1, where they've started taking children to experiment on, she's decided that she no longer wants any part of what's going on. She understands that what's going on is not right, and she resigns. But after she's resigned and gone away, she decides that she actually wants to go back and get her notes and her research notes. So she also sneaks back into this facility to try and get her notes, and this is where she bumps into Julian. Now she has always been a beta, she's never presented as an omega, but now she's been in close proximity with Julian. Over the next couple of weeks she actually transitions and becomes an omega, and he becomes obsessed with her and kind of keeps his eye on her and follows her and knows that she's transitioning into an omega, and he really believes that she belongs to him. And of course when she transitions into an omega, she needs help to go through her first heat, and so Julian is there to help her through that. I love Liliana Carlisle's Omegaverse worlds that she builds. I really enjoy her writing style. And so I thoroughly recommend this one. If you're interested in the Makeverse, or you've read a couple and you don't think they're for you, try Liliana Carlisle, because I think she does a slightly different take on the world. And like I said, I really like her writing style. I really like her alphas, and yeah, would highly recommend. So then the next one I finished was another audiobook, and this one was Savage Tracker. So I'm kind of making my way through these books as audiobooks, because I read them originally kind of last year, well 2021 and into 2022, and I'm making my way now through the audiobooks of these. So this is book 5 in the Mafia War series, and the last one of the focused on the Ivanovs, and this one focuses on Obrecht and Selena. The audiobook for this one was narrated by Wen Ross and Kai Kennicott, and I really enjoyed this one, and this was another one that I rated 5 stars. So this one is definitely an age gap, but it also focuses around BDSM, but BDSM for healing purposes. So basically what we have in this one is Obrecht is Adrian's brother, and he's very much a dominant, but he only ever tops. He doesn't want a permanent relationship. And he basically is in the same apartment building as Selena. Now, Selena we've met as a heroine in some of the other books. She was Cora's client, and was going through a very, very difficult divorce with her husband, Jack. Now, Jack is quite a key player and kind of the storyline for these books, but he had a master-slave relationship with his wife Selena, but it was not at all consensual, and Selena was pretty much tortured and abused throughout her sort of decade-long marriage. Now she's finally divorced and living in the same apartment building as Obrecht. Now, in a previous book, Obrecht was asked to keep an eye on Selena just to make sure that she was okay and her ex-husband didn't track her down and follow her. And as he's been keeping an eye on her, he is learning a bit more about her and becomes very interested in her as a person and what she's doing. Now, Obrecht is also the Ivanov's tracker, so he is an expert digging up information on people and you know, following them, capturing them, and taking them to the garage to torture them, etc. And so he digs up some information on Selena and figures out, you know, what's kind of been going on. So like I said, I rated this one 5 stars, and the reason for me this was 5 stars was because of the relationship between Selena and Obrecht. And Selena is trying to work through some very difficult issues. So she was in a master-slave relationship with her ex-husband, which she absolutely hated and didn't want any part of. However, she still has a desire to be dominated, and she doesn't understand it, and she thinks she's sort of wrong or that it's not right, and she needs help with this. Now, she gets this urge to go to a BDSM club, and she signs up for one that she knows her husband won't go to, so that she doesn't, you know, he doesn't catch her. And when Obrecht learns where she's going, he goes there and kind of rescues her and says, this isn't the club for you. You need to understand the rules and how it works, and therefore I am going to basically be your top. You can be my bottom, I'll be your top, and I'm going to kind of train you and show you how to do it safely. So basically he explains to her about consent, about safe words, about how that fact that as a bottom she has all the power, and he decides that he's going to kind of like take her under his wing and help her out because he doesn't want her to get into another dodgy situation. Of course, he intends that this is for training purposes only, and that he's not going to get involved emotionally, but of course he can't help himself. So I absolutely love this one. I think it's really, really, they have a beautiful relationship. I love how it really explores Selena's trauma, and how through BDSM she is able to heal and move on, and finally they get their happy ever after. So I would highly recommend this one. So then after that, I read The Danger You Know by Lily White, and this was surprisingly another 5-star read. So I was so thrilled to get 3 5-star reads in the month of April. And I did kind of sway on this one, whether it would normally be a 4-star or should I give it 5 stars, but I decided it was worth 5 stars, absolutely. This one is a dark romance. It is a stalker romance, a very, very intense stalker romance. The hero in this one, Ari, is actually an assassin, and it's also sort of captive. So in this one we've got Ari, who is, like I say, he's an assassin, and he gets asked to do jobs, and he really doesn't have a conscience. He has no problem killing people. He always makes it look like a suicide, like the person's killed themselves or it's some sort of tragic accident. And basically Ari is tasked with killing a man who turns out to be the heroine's father, and the heroine in this one is Adeline. Now, Ari wasn't expecting anyone to be at home when he kills the father, but actually Adeline is home. She hears a gunshot. She rushes into the study. It looks like her father has shot himself and that it's a suicide. And Ari is already out of the window, but he makes the fatal mistake of turning back and looking in, and he sees Adeline crying over her father's body. And there's something about her in that situation that he's absolutely captivated with, and proceeds then to keep an eye on her, to look after her, and ultimately becomes her stalker. He is absolutely obsessed with her. So when he kills her father, she's only 16 years old. He is much older, he's about a decade, 15 years older than her, and he has no intention of, you know, forming a relationship with her at this point. He just wants to keep an eye on her because her mother also had recently passed away, so she's now kind of an orphan. And through her final teenage years, as she goes into high school and into her early, 1920s, she acts up, plays up, she drinks and does drugs, and goes through a variety of boyfriends, some majority of which are not good people, not good for her at all. And throughout all of this, Ari very much keeps his eye on her, and unbeknown to her, he actually helps her out in some situations, and even ends up actually killing 3 of the boyfriends, I'd say boyfriends that she's with, when they do something that Ari doesn't like. He's also got a really interesting friend called Lincoln, and when he can't be around because he's on his own job, going off and doing his assassin business, Lincoln also then keeps an eye on her. So Lincoln also feels like he's in part raised her with Ari, keeping an eye on her all of this time. Now Ari is kind of happy to let her live her life, but keeping an eye on her, and it even goes so far that she meets a man and finally gets married, and Ari kind of doesn't step in, he kind of lets the marriage go ahead. However, when they get back from the honeymoon, 6 months go by, and he realises that something isn't right in the marriage, and maybe the husband isn't as nice as he appeared, and Adeline starts to go into a bit of a slump, and she's kind of lost all the sparkle, all the character that she ever had before, and Ari is not going to stand for this, and he decides it's time for him to step in and finally claim her as his own. He thinks he's stood back for far too long, and now he's going to go and get her. And so the first sort of 30% of this book is him just watching her. Then he moves in on her, and from about the 50% mark, that's when he actually captures her then and takes her captive and keeps her in his apartment because he needs to keep her safe from the husband. So I just absolutely love this one. I really like the hero. I like the way it was set up. I like the fact that the husband turned out to be a bit of a baddie, and just how obsessed Ari was. And I also like the third act breakup / conflict, because they didn't actually break up as a couple, they just needed to separate in order to get revenge on the husband. And so they did spend some time apart, but it wasn't really a breakup, and I really appreciated that as well, and really enjoyed how it all came together at the end. Okay, so then after that I wanted something a bit lighter and something that would be quick and easy to read. So I decided I was going to pick up Barbarian Lover by Ruby Dixon. This is an alien romance, it's Fated Mates, and it's book 3 in the Ice Planet Barbarian series, which Ruby Dixon is absolutely famous for. In this one, we're following Ihako and Kira. Now, Kira is one of the humans who's crash landed onto this planet, but she had a translation device put into her ear. And so she's kind of like got this device on the side of her head where she can, like, basically it translates everything. But after they're kind of like settled in the camp and, you know, some of the other humans are starting to mate with the ice planet barbarians, she hears the aliens who originally abducted her, they're going to come back for them. So basically, because they crash landed, the aliens are going to come back for them and rescue, you know, take back all the women basically. And she hears this in her earpiece, and she knows that she is, she needs to warn the tribe, but also that maybe she's at risk, because if she's got the translator in her head, maybe the aliens can find her. So she's desperate to get it out of her head, and she decides she's going to go back to kind of like this spaceship to see if she can get it out, see if there's sort of like a med bay or something where she can get in there and get this thing out of her head. Now, Ihako is one of the Ice Planet Barbarians. He very is interested in Kira, and he's very attracted to her. And he decides that she's his mate. So even though they've not resonated, because basically on this planet they have these kuis that are in their bodies that resonate when they found their fated mate. So these two have not resonated yet, but Ihako is absolutely convinced that she is his mate and she will eventually resonate to him. And he basically says, you can't go back to the spacecraft on your own. I need to come with you, be your guide, and make sure that you're okay. So this is kind of how then they sort of start their relationship and get together, and yeah, so some secrets are unraveled, some stuff goes down in this alien spaceship, and very much sets up the next book as well, when another human is disappeared, and no one knows where she is, and they think she's run off, but she may or may not have been captured by a rogue Ice Planet Barbarian. So I really enjoyed this one. It was a fun and quick, easy read. It was really light-hearted, a bit of a palate cleanser, and I rated this one 3 stars. So then I basically finished another audiobook, which was Unchosen Ruler by Maggie. So as you can see, I'm working my way very much through these books, and this is book 6 of the Mafia Wars series, but book 1 of part of the O'Malley family, and this is focused very much on Liam, who is taken over as head of the O'Malleys, and Hayley, who is one of the friendship group from the other books, and a kindergarten teacher. This audiobook was narrated by Aaron Shedlock and Victoria May, and yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this one and gave this one 4 stars. So the premise of this one is that Liam has recently come out of prison, where he's been for 15 years for murder, and he is trying to reintegrate back into the family. His father, though, who's head of the O'Malleys, Dara O'Malley, is dying, and so he is about to take over the O'Malley clan. So he very much needs to gain the trust of the men, so that they believe that he is capable of leading. And he also has to get over the animosity between himself and the Ivanovs, who believe him to be very impulsive and kind of a bit of a danger, and potentially will lead them all astray. But Liam has learned quite a lot in his 15-year stint in prison, and he's much more mature than the person he was when he went in, and he's absolutely determined to do the right things and give this a go. And they've also got a scheme going, because he doesn't want to be in the mafia lifestyle anymore, doing all the illegal things, and they've very much got a plan to make a lot of money so that they can look after the family and not have to do anything illegal anymore. Now, as soon as he meets Hayley, he takes an instant shine to her, and he really likes her. But Hayley's got a bit of a secret of her own, and she doesn't even know it, but she is actually blood related to the Baileys, who are arch enemies of the O'Malleys. And so it's interesting how Liam reacts when he finds out who Hayley's relatives actually are, how they get on together, and how they're going to kind of resolve that, because it's quite a big deal. This one is super cute though. Again, like all Maggie Cole's, it's a spicy read, and in this one everyone thinks that Hayley is very innocent, But in fact, she is quite kinky, and she has made Liam a reward chart. So every time he does something good, she gives him points, and when he gets 500 points, he gets to take a reward out of the treat box, which is usually some sort of sexual activity, including body paint and creating art from body paint. So like, you know, you probably gathered by now, I really love Maggie Cole, love the whole Mafia War series, really enjoyed the reread of this one, and rated this one 4 stars. And then the final book I read in the month of April was Hunt the Wood by Anna Fury and Amy Penzer. Now, I love Anna Fury, and she's known to me most for her Omegaverse, but she has recently decided to do a writing collab with Amy Penzer, and together they are writing a series of fairy tale retellings, and also their romances as well. So this particular one has just literally came out at the end of April, and it's book 1 in her Beautiful Nightmares series. It's a paranormal romance, like I said, it's an romance, and it's a fairy tale retelling, and this one is a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. In this one, we're following Ryder and Wotan. In this world, what we've kind of like come to know is that there's been some sort of nuclear explosion, nuclear war, and the humans are on their last legs. But because of this, there has been a tear in the veil. And behind the veil is where these fantastical paranormal creatures live. And the paranormal creatures had 2 options. They could repair the rift in the veil and go back and carry on as they were, or they can come through and save the human race, and then they have to reside there. Now, they're very fascinated by humans, so they decide they're going to come through and save the human race and reside there. And what we now have is basically we're operating in the city of New York. And if you think about Manhattan, that is owned and looked after by Wotan, who is the head of the Hunt, and he controls that area. The humans kind of live outside of that, in Central Park, in the middle of Manhattan, in Central Park is where the witches live. And basically the head of the witches is Ryder's grandmother. Ryder lives with the humans on the other side, and although he is the son of a witch, because he's a man, sort of like boy witches don't get as much power as the females, and so basically he is quite weak. And he only has one ability, which is the Cassandra ability, which means he can read people's futures. Because of this, his grandmother pretty much shunned him when he was a little boy. His parents both died, but he was shunned by his grandmother. He had weak magical ability, and he's kind of been left to fend for himself. But as he's got older, his grandma started to meddle more and more in his life, and she summoned him to the woods. Summoned him essentially to Central Park, and so he has to make his way through Wotan's territory to get to her, and Wotan does not usually allow anyone to pass through his territory, and so it becomes a bit of a hunter situation. So I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I thought it was a really interesting take on a fairy tale retelling. So I really like the world building in this, and we've met several other characters already that will obviously go on to be in other books, and the next book is a Rapunzel retelling, and we've already met a vampire called Tower, who is very much going to be one of the heroes in the next book as well. So I love this one, gave it 4 stars and would highly recommend. So there we have it, that's all the books I read in April. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to tell me any of the books that you read this month, or if you read any of the same books that I read, please comment down in the comments box below, and remember to subscribe if you want to see more content from me. Thank you very much if you made it this far, and I hope to see you next time. Bye! If you've got... Now, Ryder is... Well, take a step back. So... and he's recently escaped, but he's not escaped. So the cousin of Maxim, Boris, Dimitri, and now I'm testing my memory. Maxim, Boris, Dimitri, and Sergei. And yes, So Obrecht is Adrian's brother, and he's the cousin of Maxim, Boris, Dmitri and Sergei. And he what's he doing? But I'm not explaining this very well, am I? Okay, so my battery cut off there. And when he crash landed, some of his teammates, I don't know, some of his friends were, let's call them friends, yeah, let's call them friends. And this is really the one that we've all been anticipating. Oh, certainly I've been anticipating.